All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Raising the Bar with myself, John Cooper, and I'm delighted to have this person on the show. His name's Robert Wallace. He's an ambassador for Gays Against Groomers, and he's coming out of Arizona today, early in the morning. How you doing, Robert?
Fantastic, John. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. I think this is one of the most important topics of our time at the moment. Obviously, this has caught the attention of a lot of people, but what I find interesting is that there's a split within the LGBTQ movement, and now people are starting to see that it's gone too far. And I just want to say, Rob, I really personally appreciate what you're doing. I think it's so important to expose what's going on and the kind of the extremism, the radicalization of all this. Could you just to set the stage for everyone? They might not know what Gays Against Groomers is all about. I mean, it's pretty implicit within the title, but would you mind just laying it out for the audience? Then we can get into some questions.
Sure. So, Gays Against Groomers is a 501c4 nonprofit organization. We are a coalition of LGBT people who are standing against the indoctrination, sexualization, and mutilation of children that's being done in the name of LGBTQIAA plus inclusiveness.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a very succinct summary there. And of course, it was Jamie Michelle founded it, didn't she? I did try and reach out to her. And so this has been going, would I be right in saying this has been going a year, did you say? Like a few months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A year and a few weeks. So we just had our 1 year anniversary.
All right. And you've been involved since the beginning, I take that? Or you
very, very close. I got involved actually in November of last year.
Okay, fantastic.
So it's been 7 years.
Yeah. So okay, so let's go into like the bones of that then. So what exactly do you classify as grooming? Should we go into that? I mean, is this to do with the medicalisation and the mutilation of children? Is that the main part of it, or is there something else you'd like to sort of summarize it with?
Yeah, well, there's a few different levels of grooming happening. We have the grooming of at the core level, at the most immediate danger, the most horrific level, the grooming of children for sexual purposes between an adult and a child. On top of that, on a more broad level, we have grooming when it comes to the confusion in the sexual realm for a child, like taking a child who maybe is a boy and played with a Barbie once and dressing him like a girl and renaming him and giving girls cuts. And we can groom people and children, some people are, into thinking they're the other gender because they gave hints or something when they were kids. And on a more general level, we're grooming our kids in general when we hang pride flags all around the school, when we give them homework assignments which ask them to imagine what it would be like to be gay, or here's literature on how to install a butt plug, or to enter into these sex chat apps and to keep it from your parents. This is stuff the law doesn't recognize as legal. And yet the content is so advanced in terms of leading kids down the road to basically advanced perversion by the time they hit age of majority. I mean, they're learning fetishes that grown adults don't know about. And it's like standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to perversion. Because they are learning from professional gay positive activists the most advanced sexual information, sometimes before or at puberty, but way before they should be exposed to it, before they should be having sex, or even as an adult. It doesn't really so much of it is just actual perversion that's meant to assume everybody wants to be in that lifestyle.
Yeah, perversion is a good word that sums all that up. I mean, I was reading today that they were setting an assignment to 9-year-olds to go away and masturbate. I mean, it just couldn't get more evil than that. It just doesn't get more evil and insidious.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I try to look at everything from both sides. Like, is this really a legitimate need? Am I being old-fashioned about this? But this kind of indoctrination, it has no place in a child's education. This isn't the way that kids should be steered. And it is really up to these kids at their own pace in conjunction with their parents to, come into whatever thing they're going to come into. But, you're just teaching it like it's a school at, subject at school, like math. And then there's putting condoms on Bobby and butt plugs. And then there's geometry after that. And then there's, so it's not academic.
Oh, it's certainly not academic. I mean, what do you think is the deeper lying agenda behind all this? I mean, because it seems to me, you just mentioned the word there, activism. These are activists dressed up as teachers. They're trying to infiltrate the schooling system. What's the overall aim of all this, and kind of what do they want as their end goal? Like, what's this all about, really?
Well, to some degrees, I'll be speculating when I piece this together and in the way that I see it, and some of these aspects of this characterization are not part of Gays Against Groomers, but from my personal opinion. Actually, let me if I get a drink real quick.
Sure.
And that is that there definitely seems to be a top-down, coordinated effort around the country and the world to legitimize and normalize this trans and progressively the pedophilic behavior. This is being done not through grassroots efforts of just average activists, but certain activists who've been some trained, some already on their own warpath, but they're being empowered by people who have a very top-down view of everything, and they're very specifically empowering these ideologies. So we have the fact that you're going to degrade all of humanity. Let's like away from the whole money and power and this and that. There is more abstract sort of I think agendas tied to this. One of them is to confuse humanity, mess us all up. Another one is to really destroy the next generation. There's going to be a lot of sterilizations happening. There's a lot of things causing sterilizations these days, it seems. And then you have, kids who are going to enter into the world starting with the belief that there's all these gender identities. They are not going to be able to get a grip on the dichotomy of their own inner psychology if they are going to mince up the masculine and feminine principles at the level of gender or gender expression or any other thing. And so this is just a very wonky way to integrate mental illness. Most of the people who are identifying as trans are people who are somewhere on the spectrum of autism. They are almost all gay, and they almost around 87.5 statistically will desist in those feelings of transgenderism. So what that means is, and they thought I was a little autistic when I was a kid, and I was gay, and I was weird, and if this would have all been propagated then, I'm sure I would have clung on to it for any number of reasons, and so it's a very dangerous thing to, put out as an option to kids who one second think they're a boy, next second they think they're a dragon, then I'm Superman, now I'm Wonder Woman, and now let's just, in that state, we're going to nail them down and say, okay, let's, put a permanent solution on this temporary identity crisis. It seems like ridiculous that we're talking about it, but it's happening. People feel like they're empowered to do it. This is what science is calling for. This is inclusion. And they just have no idea what they're playing with as far as the next generation is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, why is that though? Why are they trying to confuse them so much? Is it just because there's a massive revenue stream that can be created out of this? Obviously, it's now an absolutely booming industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
With all the surgeries and everything else. But is there a deeper, more evil kind of sort of conclusion that we can draw from that? Because I can understand potentially that there's the sterilization aspect. I mean, that potentially could be leading into something, like the depopulation agenda. Don't know. But what about the actual confusion? Why is that, do you think? There must be a reason for that they're trying to, make these kids more confused at an early age.
Well, I will say, and I'm right here where your head's at, because right on the surface, all the minions between here and the true reason,
Mm.
it's just people who are busy getting money for themselves, or that are being drawn about through blackmail, or through, through chasing money. But that really obscures the real cause, which is something more abstract. There is a battle between, I believe personally, between good and evil, a spiritual battle taking place. These are dire times when man is going through different kinds of transformations, and I think maybe some are seeing this window of time of man's development as an opportunity to stunt his development, to stop. Maybe we're in the process of all awakening or something like that. But this is also a time when, if they could, they're evil, they could have a very powerful effect too. So I just look at things like timing. I know these people tend to be really entwined with occultism and things like that, so it's important to calculate, where their head's at there. And so it's pretty self-explanatory once you kind of framework.
I'm glad you mentioned the occultic aspect, because I feel like we're on the same sort of page then. I don't want to put you off with some of my ideas, but obviously we seem to be thinking in alignment here. I mean, I actually think that there's a correlation between, you mentioned it there, the masculinity side of it. I think there's a certain weakening of masculinity as we see in the last few years. And I think the masculine represents resistance energy, discernment, boundaries. And I think that has come about, ironically, at the time where there's a lot of big agendas at play. And so instead of having those boundaries and pushing back and being the resistance energy, we're kind of being a lot more compliant. We're receiving it, we're accepting it. And I think that isn't a coincidence that that's happened at the same time. The denigration of the masculine, the denigration of the man, the shaming of toxic masculinity, all that coming at a time when all these big pandemics are happening and everything, and everyone just has to comply, no resistance energy. We don't have that warrior energy anymore. So I do think there's a definite link there. But can I ask, Robert? So obviously you're a gay man, you're open about that. That's partly why you're
right
in this movement. For me, gay rights used to be, right to homosexuals, homosexuality, but it feels to me now that it's just become about sexual deviance now. I mean, you see some of these pride shows, you see people wearing gimp masks, and you have these sort of semi-naked shows where they're showing their buttocks in front of children. The children are being brought along, and they're sort of like this, and the parents, liberal mums are all very happy about it, and it feels as though it's more about parading kind of fetishism than it is about any kind of original classic gay rights or anything like that. When did it fall off a cliff?
That's a good question. It's been getting overwhelming support, I think, since even around 2010, I think, in 11, there was around this point a lot more hubbub about gay marriage being legalized, and then you start to see representation on TV, and this sort of I think gave it a more mainstream role in terms of representation and the public consciousness. And it also legitimized the lifestyles. People got to know the characters and this and that. And so I think what you just pointed to, the pride, it really has evolved or devolved into an arrogance. And so in conjunction with, pride turning arrogant, and you've got it now being popularized in the mainstream, where they're really glorifying the pride/arrogance as a social contagion, in terms of an idea that's being spread about that would otherwise not make it out there, that's so toxic. I think that's really changed the community. It's changed the average person who consumes that type of media and hangs out with their friends, and now culture is assimilating this proud, arrogant attitude toward any sort of limitations. And like you were talking about, the war on men and masculinity that started before, right now, what a lot of people consider a war on women, women's sports, the legitimacy of biological women to be called a mother, etc. So the man and the woman paradigm are both being attacked. They want to destroy the family, the nuclear family, the heteronormative nuclear family, and because that is how society is kept. So unfortunately, we're making a weird hybrid, mutt species of gender and sexual identity that are very arbitrarily selected. All these neologisms for these, whims that people are going through, and then the crazy demand that we call these people a Zedzer, Zedner, or whatever they make up, and we're supposed to, you don't know my pronoun, and so that is just too much.
It's a slippery slope as well, isn't it? I mean, you can see that by the never-ending additional letters to the LGBTQ acronym, and also to the colors on the rainbow flag as well. It's because it never wants to end, does it? I mean, when you get these movements, it becomes a consciousness, doesn't it? When you have all that energy directed into it, like any movement, it wants to grow, it wants to build its power base. So that's why it's I believe, trying to bring in more and more people. And you can tell that this is, you mentioned there, the heteronormative aspect of it. It wants to invert natural law. It wants to, like you said, the nuclear family, biological sex, sex itself, intercourse itself, because procreation, because that's also intrinsically linked to natural law. So it feels to me that there is a deeper, you could say occultic, it's more like some would say satanic agenda to anything that's considered normative. They want to invert that and displace that with, I don't know, they would call this queer theory, I think, anything that's sort of, seen as they're trying to replace it, displace it with the fringe ideas to make that the core central narrative. And I don't know if you've got any thoughts as well about the new additions to the pride flag and what that really means. I think it's the progressive colors. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, the progress flag. And apparently it was created in 2016. And, it represents, the trans and that now the racial interest of the Black people under suffrage. Like, I go from being gay to being I'm in the wrong body to the other races. This is racism. And maybe you've seen the meme graphic where they put like 4 of these progress flags, and
Yes,
and you see the swastika bear itself out. And I think in terms of sigils and things, in terms of the occult, there's that aspect. In terms of adding letters, we also have the maps, or want to jump on the bandwagon. They want to get on the gravy train. These are the minor attracted persons who also advocate for the adult attracted minors. So this is part of the effort to normalize pedophilia. And the problem, obviously, with saying what needs not be said here is that as an LGBT, person, as somebody who's just gay, having a different attraction is a whole different ballgame than I have the wrong genitalia on today. In the case of a gender fluid person, they might say something just like that, because tomorrow or at dinner time tonight, that changes. And there's all these aberrated ways of thinking, and it all fall under what is a psychiatrist diagnosed in the DSM-5, the gender dysphoria, the body dysmorphia. These are mental health conditions coupled with autism, coupled with being gay and having whatever hangups that people naturally come into the world with, and then coupled with the nonstop bombardment of propaganda, brainwashing, influencing that's coming at these kids. And then the schools legitimizing it now. We got flags and the boobs in the White House lawn. And it's like, it is setting people up who can't think for themselves for deception everywhere they turn.
Absolutely. And, in schools, they're doing their best to try and affirm the children's new identity without the parents even knowing about it. I mean, it's rotten to the core. It's evil to the core. And it just seems wherever you look, it seems to be popping up more and more. I mean, I also wanted to, so just going back to the rainbow flag, would you agree that those are what those new colors represent? Is that to do with the minor attracted persons, the pink, the blue, and the white? What's your take on that?
I'd say, in a sense, yes, it points toward the innocence. The white, we hope to see, everybody knows it's innocence in whatever context. Well, it's the innocence of a child for these people. If you look at the pedo flag, the minor attracted flag, you've got the same sort of white, and then light blue and light pink, and then slightly darker light blue and light pink, relating to the interests of the age level infant level of the children. So when I'm seeing these colors implemented in this context by these types of people, I think the people who are like most interested in seeing this type of education being brought in front of kids are the type of people who most need to be looked at in terms of unhealthy sexual paradigm they have around kids. And some would say, look at their hard drive. Some would say, I mean, just to give you an example, I went and spoke at the Tucson Unified School District board meeting, which Tucson, Arizona here, and Arizona recently was holding a drag show at the high school. This was like a month ago or so, and it was going to happen on a Saturday, so it was on a weekend, but it's on school property with school children. The actual students are the drag performers, and it was their second annual. The first annual was sponsored, because the school requires a sponsor, by somebody who no longer is with the school, because they had to resign because they were having sexual relations with a 15-year-old student. This lesbian teacher and her lesbian lover had this 15-year-old student living with them and were having sexual relations with this girl. And for this person had to resign. And so I'm not saying that anybody who necessarily sponsors or believes in this sort of thing is necessarily tied to pedophilic sort of behavior or whatever, but having that level of interest in kids going and thinking down those lines is a lot of projection. It's a lot of corruption of the youth, at the very least. In ancient Greece, you would have got them on a corruption of the youth charge, maybe a little hemlock for that. And then, but now, it's a matter of letting these gay kids express their culture. And this is so ridiculous to me that this is culture. It's a shame. It's maybe an underground thing some adults do. It's, maybe the shame of, it's not something that should represent dignified people. It's like I went to Jamaica one time and I was at a resort, and during one of the evening performances, they had the world dances being performed. So here's a dance from Russia and the traditional Russian music. And then here's Mexico, and they got the sombreros, and it's beautiful, and the senorita. And they go into the countries and they're dignified. And then they get to Jamaica. Oh, man, we're going to see the heritage come out now. And what did they put on? Booty bumping rap music. And what they all come out to do, they all came out and twerked on the stage. This was representation of Jamaica for these people. And that's kind of what I feel like is happening in the gay community, is we are not presenting dignified people who accomplish things, who are upright, who are moral. No, that's old fashioned. We don't do that anymore. That's, very bigoted religious thinking or whatever. And as a result, we're embracing their identity, the sex positivity, the sexual identity is who they are. They are whatever fetish. They are a furry. They are a bear or a twink. They are, into BDSM, or they're a submissive, and so thinking has gone beyond superficial. We've gone through the floor into degraded sexuality. And granted, everybody has sexuality except for those who claim to be asexual, which I used to count myself among them. And so the fact is, there's different levels. There's 8 billion people, and a lot of people have found ways to take things to places that we couldn't have even fathomed. And unfortunately, we used to separate them from the family. We used to keep those, and the kids and the upbringing. And now we're intermixing them. Now they got cell phones, and we're just making professional pervs in the name of inclusiveness right now.
It's frightening, but it's absolutely what's going on. It really is. And also, you have they call it gender affirming care or therapy, don't they? Which is about, you have a confused kid. And the thing is that, we have the feminine and masculine energies within us. We have those gendered energies, But we used to say, when a girl was more in her masculine, we'd say she's more of a tomboy. She's like, that's just, it's a personality thing. It's a temperament thing. Now, when you hear that, you get teachers or these parents saying, no, do you know what? You are a boy. let's try and affirm that now by getting your genitals, cut off, mutilated, your boobs cut off, whatever. And the same for boys. If they feel more effeminate, we used to have a word for it, effeminate. It's okay to be effeminate. It's fine. It's your gendered energy within you. It's fine to be within that. It doesn't mean you are a girl. It just means that you're more in that temperament. But they're trying to take that understanding and then push them into actually physically mutilating themselves, physically changing themselves. And then they call that affirming, I think they call that affirming therapy, affirming surgery, right? But then if
Yeah,
they used to, but then at the same time, if they have someone that's confused and you wanted to put them on the hormones of the biology that they were born with, they call that conversion therapy. And there's obviously they're trying to ban that now. They see that as transphobic. Give me what the hell's going on here, Robert?
yeah. We over here we do call it gender affirming care, which
Yeah.
I'm sure they have this variation of that over there, like
Yeah.
you're saying. And that consists of, if they're prepubescent, it would start with like puberty blockers. And the controversy around that is whether you can just stop it, whether you will start functioning again, whether you stunt your sexual development altogether. So there is a lot of problems that come from puberty blockers that are not advertised. And then you have hormone replacement therapies. So if they need estrogen or they need testosterone, and then so now you've got their body reversing course in terms of like reverting its, inverting its natural, it's like reversing. So, and in that way, you're preparing them for their physical gender reassignment surgery ultimately. And so now we have youth, teenagers, and all different spectrums of ages who are undergoing various forms of gender reassignment surgery. And when we remember that if 87.5% of these people are going to desist, it means change course. Like, oh wait, I'm not a girl after all. They're almost all going to realize they're gay. They're all on this autism spectrum. I mean, what kind of revelation is that for all of these people, most of these people, to one day realize that maybe they just want to carry on and be a boy like everybody after all. I figured it out. I'm a boy. And
Yeah.
they look
Wow. What a
down and,
surprise. Yeah.
it's done. Nope. That cognition you should have had a long time ago. And these kids, their brains aren't developed till they're 25 at least.
Yeah.
One other thing, I just want to get in sideways here. My Arizona co-lead for Gays Against Groomers, his name is Matt Ray. When he was 26, he was actually a female, and he underwent gender reassignment surgery. He went through the hormone replacement, and now at the age of 32, he finds himself 1 year into trying to detransition with loads of medical problems. This person can't do anything. He has to see the doctor. His body's constantly hurting. He's trying to go back to be a female, realized that he made a mistake, and that he made this decision when he was 26. So imagine how much easier it is to make this error when you're 18, 15, 14, 12, etc.
Yeah, it's frightening. It's terrifying, really. I mean, you can't get alcohol till you're 21 in America, can you?
Right. No.
I mean, they're treating this like a tattoo. They're treating it like okay, they're an adult. They want, but it's worse than that because they can get this done when they're prepubescent. I mean, it's just absolutely sick, and I just can't understand how this is being allowed to happen. I mean, I had a guest on the other week, and he transitioned, had the bottom surgery and facial surgery, and then after a couple of months, he just went, I don't know why that happened. I mean, I was feeling a little bit emotional and sensitive at the time, and one of my friends, made me think as though I was a woman, and I did it, and now I'm realizing that now I'm having to live as a man again with a vagina. It's just, and now he's having to sort of imagine going out and trying to meet women and having to explain to them that he's got a vagina. He's just like, he feels completely, corrupted by it, like, destroyed by it, manipulated by it. And this is not just happening on a localized level. This is happening around the world. And it's just terrifying, really. And like, I think you mentioned it there, but when he came out as trans, he got a lot of support. Everyone was loving him. So, as soon as he wanted to detransition, suddenly he was, almost considered a far right Nazi just for wanting to choose to transition. And I thought this was all about supporting the minorities and supporting people's choice. Transition doesn't mean one direction. A transition just means moving from one point to another point. But you'll notice it's very telling that when these people detransition, how immediately ostracized they are from their own, groups. I don't know if you've got any insight into that, but I think that's very telling.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that you might be in a pathological sort of brainwashed state of mind if more important than any facts bearing themselves out, any new information presenting itself, more important is the agenda that you feel like has to be accomplished. If the ends justify the means, what we're really saying is it doesn't matter how many people the LGBTQIA agenda has to eat up, has to chew up and spit out for us to eventually see a world where people are routinely shifting their sexual identities. That is just, you're just a casualty. You made a mistake. This program, there's nothing wrong with this program. And it is a very dark way of, godless way of thinking. And yeah. This is my feeling.
I mean, I actually posted up the interview that I did with this guy, and I put it up in a Reddit, and it was the LGBTQ subreddit, and it was immediately banned, and I was blocked from the group. I thought, why? I mean, it's just his story from transitioning to become a woman, then transitioning back, and it was removed immediately by the moderators, and I was blocked. I was kicked out. It speaks volumes to me what it's about. For me, it's they don't like anyone going back to the heteronormative identity, because that to them is part of the patriarchy. It's their enemy. So it's really not about what it is on the surface, is it? It's not really about honoring and being inclusive of all these different types of identities. It actually has a deeper political agenda of trying to invert the heteronormative, patriarchal, whatever they call it, society. That's the overall aim, isn't it? Everything else is just a mirage.
Yeah, it's to bring us into a brave new world of sexual promiscuity, fluidity, and what we have here is with what they want to do is they want to make you afraid to question them. You're a homophobe if you question me. You're a racist if you question, mostly peaceful protests. You're a anti-Semitic if you question anything that a Jewish person ever done. And in my thinking, this is my logic. If I am anti-Semitic or racist or homophobic or transphobic because I simply point something out that is unfortunate but true, wrong, that it's coming from this person, I feel like it is actually more of a prejudice move to treat them like they're not human, to say that they are so above making or so beyond making a mistake that they're not even in the human species. Either I'm implying that they have attained enlightenment, they're godlike, and they make no errors, or I say that they are not human and that they are not capable of doing the things that humans do, including making errors. And the fact that we can't question certain things from certain people goes to show you that their logic holds them above reproach, holds them above the law, it holds them above humanity and morality. And they don't, certain individuals don't think that they should be allowed to be questioned. And that defense mechanism is what protects them. Because once people see through it as just a defense mechanism, then we can do open criticisms. Does not mean that you hate or you have a prejudice against some portion of the person that you're upset about.
Absolutely. That defense mechanism, that shield it's the perfect storm, really, because if you think about it, you don't need a strong double-sided titanium shield to protect yourself. You can actually protect it with the veneer of vulnerability, innocence, the marginalized, the damsel in distress. And so it's almost like I call it like, those gun shootouts where they use a human shield and they pick up there's a gun shootout, they pick up the human and it's in front of them. They don't shoot because they don't want to shoot the innocent person. That to me is the metaphor of how these movements operate. That shield, it's invincibility through innocence, through that fragility, and that's how the movements work. And so you can't say anything, you can't poke holes in it, because immediately what you don't like, you're a homophobe, you're another phobe, you're an ist, you're a this, you're a this, you're that. And so it works. That's the way. It's the perfect storm, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're going to point immediately back. So depending on the category, there's a Stonewall all over again. This is slavery all over again. This is the Holocaust all over again. And they'll make the tiniest thing into your alliance with the worst thing that's ever happened. And I don't mean to, really broaden it up, but if you look right now, what is happening is a war from every corner because of identity politics. We have so compartmentalized ourselves by gender and sexuality and race and nationality and religion, and there are so many different variations and combinations thereof, and immigrations and different interests. And as a result, we are now expecting every other minority demographic combination to respect us, and if they don't, then we just look from our egoistic perspective and say we're being attacked by the world. And by that, everybody's being attacked, because the fact of the matter is nobody's waking up and only thinking about you and your interests. You are the one that has to represent whatever combination you are in the world, and you should represent it to the best of your ability. But if you're waiting for the world to come and validate you for being you, so that way you can stop misinterpreting everybody's, RBF for hatred towards you. A lot of people are projecting their own, inner sadness, and they think everybody's like living this inner life, and they're writing this dialogue about the world. And the fact is, if everybody would get out of their own little ego sphere and start to look at where we're in common, start to bridge these gaps, and we can end this attack from people who are so different from us on the basis of a blind prejudice, which is what is happening and being fueled by mostly the mainstream media, then we might have a chance of like everybody coming together. But right now, we are very compartmentalized. And so for Gays Against Groomers, for instance, these advocates for this sexual progressive agenda, they're insinuating themselves, they're forcing themselves upon us in a way that we have to defend ourselves. They are coming at us offensively. And it's not an option to resign ourselves to letting them do whatever they want. This is how they've taken over so far. So we have a responsibility to stand in protection of our people and our interests.
And how are you doing that at the moment? Like, how is your movement doing that? Like, you having any success?
We are having success. I think it was 13 bills or so that we've helped pass, that we've been part of passing around the country. There's been a lot of bills that we've gone to speak at that have not passed for various reasons. As you know, people in a lot of positions of power who are very much in favor of this woke agenda, and as a result, we are having to work double time just to squeeze out what we can. But we are growing so massively in terms of social media, and I think what that's really worth is we're spreading the understanding, we're spreading the ideology that kids need to be protected from these certain interests and be taught educational things instead. And that is something people are gravitating towards, because the world is not giving them that option. And so between what we're doing with various coalitions, the laws we're trying to change, speaking at school boards, I'm running for a school board here locally next year. We have people in our group just really doing everything we can to put awareness on the problems that are happening.
Fantastic. So there has been a little bit of a pushback, and you've noticed it. Things have been either slowed down or stopped in their tracks completely.
Well, there's a lot of resistance to what we're doing, and a lot of that has been fueled by when the media slanders, the entire movement, regardless of whether it's Gays Against Groomers or Moms for Liberty or any of the tons of coalitions that are saying, hey, don't put that in front of a kid. They're going right around and talking to their audience who watches them and saying, this is what transphobes look like. This is what transphobes, sound like. These are the type of people that are prejudiced against, and they fill their heads and their hearts with all of this garbage. And so when they come back and they see us in the streets, or they see our bumper sticker, or they, see us at work or whatever, their head and their heart is just filled with all of this gossiping, lying, misinformation that has been sown against us.
Yeah, I mean, I just went on the Wikipedia page of Gays Against Groomers. It just goes to show the complete bias of it. But it says Gays Against Groomers is an American far-right anti-LGBT organization known for protesting against gender-affirming care for minors. I mean, how can you be? It's just like, does anyone actually take that seriously anymore? And then the problem is, you'll have like the newspaper, like the publications, they'll go on there and they'll say, "Oh, is that what they're about?" And then they'll make an article about it, and then Wikipedia will use that article, and then it becomes like a perpetual cycle of bullshit begets bullshit, and then of course it spreads out, and people, like you say, the public start to take that into their consciousness, and they start to really see it like that, even though you're not like that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one time we watched this clip of Nancy Pelosi over here talking to the media, explaining the process of merchandising their slander. She explained, we come out here, we slander somebody, you report on it, then we report on your reporting. We say the New York Times said today that I said that you did. It just keeps adding layers and levels of credibility, and so. Yeah, in that way, people are just so brainwashed because a lot of them aren't thinking for themselves because of the mental, the dissidence, all the noise that is in everything that's happening. And so it really comes down to individuals, I think, who are like yourself, standing in a position seemingly against the world, as it seems. There's people who think for themselves, who know what independent thinking is, who knows what it is to hold an opinion or a feeling in spite of anybody or everybody around you, not even just disagreeing, at least disagreeing, but maybe even attacking you. So many people can't stand for the things that they really do believe in. And so that's what's making it difficult, is people who are comfortable and don't want to participate. And even if they believe in the cause, they become part of the problem when they support people, ideologies, or movements that are working against it.
Against them.
It's working against them and their beliefs, and they say, well, I agree with you guys, but I got to come over here and vote for this guy anyway. But, or I know that's kind of wrong, but, let's. And so it's just, everybody has a role to play. And there's a lot of people who compromise in the middle. And but for the most part, even of the people who aren't compromising, we just need more people to speak out, like say something, don't hide in the shadows, because we are underrepresented right now. There's a lot of people, even a ton of people, who are coming out and saying this is wrong within the gay community and the straight community, saying this transgender agenda in schools is wrong, but it's still nothing in comparison with what the statistics and what the polling shows, how many people are against what is happening. There are sometimes our school board meetings where you have a representation of a whole bunch of trans activists, and few of this, 55, 60, 70 plus percent of the population who's against it, a lot fewer than them. So it's good if everybody can just pick up whatever plow they're next to, and activism isn't for everybody, but that's the only way we're all going to make a change, is we stand up against policies and things, we make our voices heard, we come together, and we don't just tacitly allow it to happen.
Yeah, which is, I think, what's happening at the moment. What does that look like practically? Like, how can people that are watching this show, for instance, like what are the sort of steps that they can take to provide a little bit of that resistance? Because obviously, like you say, like the polls, they might silently agree with what we're saying, but then when it actually comes to action, they're a little bit too scared. But like, what's something that they can tangibly do to like maybe start that journey into pushing back?
Yeah. Well, one of the first things you can do is you can register to request to speak at your at state, local legislature when bills are being brought forward that have to do with the education of kids, and they're bringing sexuality in there, or other policies or laws are being discussed. Anybody, any citizen can go and request to speak, and you get floor time in front of decision makers. You put your voice on the record, it's recorded, and if you share it in social media, it's distributed and it's heard over and over. And you can take one little action like that, and you can spread a lot of awareness with that. People can join coalitions like Gays Against Groomers. We take on members who are LGBT, and we also take on allies from the straight community who want to band together with us. You can join other coalitions like Mom Army, Moms for America, Moms for Liberty, Dad Army. And there's just so many groups, patriot groups, groups that are looking to secure the safety of kids from this agenda. The crazy thing is that people don't realize that people on, that have more conservative traditional interests that are being accused of being far right extremists right now, that they think that they're so full of hatred and prejudice. If they would just go to one event where they're around people, dealing with people of this different ideology, they would be shocked. Their jaw would be on the floor at how long they've been living under this false assumption, this lie that they've been told, that there is so much hatred for them. As a gay person, I've never experienced one iota of prejudice to my face. I've only ever experienced loving kindness, friendship, and it's like our community who wants to protect children is all about supporting adults who want to live their lives and exercise their liberties. But with that also comes the respect of keeping your hands off other people's children, of respecting normal, healthy stages of development, observing lines of appropriateness, of dignified behavior, and ultimately having just sound common sense when it comes to what constitutes perversion around children. It shouldn't be such a mystery. It shouldn't be such a big controversial debate. But all of a sudden, some people, they're just as queer as they are they also, a submissive dominatrix subject? This is part of my identity. I have to walk around, and in this way, it's not a matter of my sexuality. It's my identity. It's just gotten way too far, and people are not dignifying themselves anymore. They've lost their dignity, and they think that being gay or trans or whatever is the reason or excuse.
Absolutely. And of course, we've imported your drag queen story hour over here. And they're now calling that a sensory event. So when these men in sort of thongs are getting their bollocks out, sweaty bollocks out in front of children all watching with their kind of happy liberal mums, it's now been labeled a sensory event, and the children are too young to really understand what's going on. That's how they kind of back it up. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, everything, let's take them to the Moulin Rouge while we're at it. Let's take them to a little old-fashioned burlesque or whatever, because they don't understand, what all that represents. There's a reason why we don't take kids to rated R movies, to rated X films, to any number of things that they don't understand. Because a lot of this stuff constitutes a kind of violence on the innocent mind. They are being assaulted by the genitals, which are being violently and animalistically gyrated or exposed at them, and these are they don't know what to do with these thoughts that are coming, these people's feelings and their thoughts, they're attacking them. And the whole thing is, it's not just inappropriate, but it is a kind of a spiritual attack on a child, to put this big sexual half-naked gay boogeyman in front of them. And I don't think that people really realize that just because they don't understand doesn't mean they won't come to understand way more rapidly because of it. I think that's the hope. They are trying to expose and acclimate the kids, and they want to normalize it for them. and maybe they'll have like a gradual awakening, like, but this is nothing to awaken into. This is something to be avoided. And as a result, we are going to have, teenagers who are going to be dealing with the most extreme, weird, decrepit, defiled fetishes because, they started on, fisting 5 years ago. Somebody was just telling me about these kits that were given out. It's called Fistgate. Fistgate. This whole thing, this event. I don't know anything about it, and I probably shouldn't even be telling people about it. But apparently, it was given out to kids. These packets of these kits to prepare them for fisting. So I mean, the thing. So yeah, exactly. Like what? And these are the types of influences which are not in jail, which are running children-oriented programs, which are not being stopped while they are in process, and who are being supported and hailed civil rights leaders or something. That's what we're up against. That's what people are afraid of being called a homophobe over, or a transphobe, or a pedophile.
I'll take that label. I'll take that label if it means drawing a line in the sand.
I just got done talking with somebody named Just Jen Reacts. She's got a show, and she said the shocking thing to me. She had just gotten called a pedophobe by somebody because of our anti-pedophilia comments. And it gave her pause. She had to think about it. She realized she's not afraid of pedophiles, so she's not really a pedophobe, but pedophobe. I mean, yeah, they are so empowered that they're going to come out and they're going to shame you for shaming their very healthy, natural pedophilic impulses. You just don't understand children and man, science and psychology. Maybe you should, look into that, you caveman Neanderthal.
I mean, we are like, pretty much fully in the hell world right now. I mean, it can't get much worse. Maybe in 10 years, they'll say you're a satanic ritual phobe or something like that. You don't like us sacrificing babies and drinking their blood, you bloody phobe, you. I mean, it's just, when's it going to end? It's just like worse and worse day by day. I mean, it's just horrific. I mean, and some of these drag queen story hour dancers, we have this thing called a DBS check here. So it's a criminal background check. And so everyone has to go through this before they're employed. And they've been told to do not do a background. The actual DBS have been told to not do a check on these people under the guise of inclusivity. That's how bad it's got. Yeah. They're actually, and they're basically giving them complete protection. And some of these actually are known pedophiles, and they've gone on record. It's on record, and they're just letting them in front of children under the guise of inclusivity and tolerance towards trans people. I mean, it doesn't get much more evil than that.
It's ruining everything for everybody, because I thought, hey, there's no more rights I could possibly want. I don't know why you would need to go to another, human rights campaign event or what policy, and now it's just about attacking people to the end and attacking anybody who questions anything, like you might be a pedophile, sir. Oh, that sounds like a hate crime there. Do you have some sort of prejudice against people like me? And again, we're right back into that that zone right there. What was I gonna say? Yeah, well, anyway.
Yeah, it was the DBS thing I was talking about how they're just put up in front of, and then
we have right now a huge problem with child trafficking all over the world. We got so many films that are coming out that are exposing the Child Protective Services, CPS, as we know them over here, and same sort of thing, pedophiles within the rings, being tied to all kinds of circuits of pedophilic activities. And it's just so obvious. You brought up the whole religious, the satanic ritual thing, and people are fighting Target over here. They had this clothing for the gay pride with Satan on it for little kids. Satan loves your pronouns. Satan supports you. We've got, you see what happens in our music events, whether it's at our Super Bowl, our biggest events, or it's at our music award shows. You got the Sam Smith, you got whatever, they can drag down, they can defile Jesus, or they can glorify the devil. You've got people like Celine Dion and all this dark stuff and all these dark celebrities and their clothing out. She came out of the clothing with skulls, black and white for little infants. It was really sick. And Balenciaga and what they're doing, with their advertising campaign controversy. So it's very obvious that there is an effort to normalize all kinds of sexual perversion, sexual abuse, pedophilia in the public consciousness.
Absolutely, and it's in your face as well. That's the thing. They're not even hiding it. It's almost like a kind of an arrogant, displaying of it all to like really shove it in your face to show what's really going on. I mean, I've actually got a book coming out where I've investigated this in the paedophile network and the child trafficking and the ritual abuse and stuff, which is going to be out in August. And maybe we can have a conversation about that another time. But I mean, it's rife. It's absolutely rife at a time where we need to be protecting the children and, really safeguarding these children and doing the best we can. Even just like you say, just, doing what you can around you, forming those coalitions, going and standing up in these, committee meetings and stuff like that. That's where it starts. Because if we don't do that, then what's happening on a larger level is going to be terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like what I'm doing, just squeaking and squawking over here, but we have to have our voices heard. The silence is taken and used by our opponents as consent, as proof positive that we have consented. And these sorts of like the dark stuff that happens to us, that they do prepare us for, they do get a tacit consent from the population, and that happens every time they tell us stuff, and then we just allow it to happen. And right now, there's so many people allowing it to happen. The few people left, as you can see, we're being maligned as far right extremists, which, wow, that was easy. I didn't even have to do anything. I didn't have to go to Nazi school. I didn't have to join a cult. All I had to do was say, save the children, and I'm far right. So, hey, that's an easy one to get in. So, and the other thing is, they are confident. We have political leaders, governors, politicians who really feel like behind the scenes, they have everything locked, loaded, and ready to go. At this point, there will be nothing that's going to prevent them from pulling all the stops to accomplish whatever the agenda is on a broad globalized level, to right down to making sure the children normalize these gender identity roles, that perversion finds its way into these kids' lives, that the nuclear family is destroyed, that the kids are empowered as citizens who have the right to consent, because children have rights too. And this is the world they are forming a brave new world. Don't worry about it. You don't have to go read it. Just look at what kind of world that's being painted for you in pictures through the changes. And the World Health Organization is saying, the World Health Organization, the same one that won everybody on the pandemic treaty, they're saying that children have the right to consent to sex with an adult. It is part of being a human citizen. You tell me World Economic Forum and the rest of you guys aren't going to be saying, this is all coming in one way or the other.
And yet the World Health Organization don't deem adults adult enough to decide what they want in their body in terms of the jab. That's it's all, you can tell it's all BS and an agenda if you've got at least a couple of brain cells to rub together, I think. Robert, would you mind just telling everyone about, let's say the website or the Facebook group? Is it you on social media, I gather?
Yeah, so Gays Against Groomers, I think we have around we just hit 300,000 followers on Twitter, so we're at Against Groomers, and against is spelled out funny, so just do a search for Gays Against Groomers. I run the Arizona page, which is at GAG for gag _ Arizona. And so you'll see a lot of news there that we're doing locally, and you'll see in our main page everything that's coming from every direction. We're on Instagram too, so you'll want to join us there. And if anybody's interested in joining, if you're LGBT and you say, this has got to stop, and I'm going to use my voice to say something, I'm not going to tacitly agree by staying silent with the rest of these homosexuals, I'm going to join GAG, and we're going to say something. Go to gaysagainstgroomers.com join. And if you're straight, guess what? We're taking on allies too. We want you to be part of our coalition. And I would just recommend that if anybody is interested, they want to go find Mom Army, or they want to go find any other coalition of anything they're interested in that is busy standing up for the rights of children and protecting what we value, then I recommend you do that. And finally, I'll just suggest that if you do need assistance exposing weird things that are happening, no matter where you're at in the world, over in London, England, over in Japan and India, it doesn't matter. Send to us, email us, pictures or whatever you have of the homework assignments, of the propaganda on the walls, of the drag show for all ages, of the drag queen story hour, of the pride parade for all ages, things like that. We need to get eyes on. We can't just let it happen right under our nose. Because that's how you normalize it, and we're going to lose our ground the longer we.
Maybe we can get some ambassadors here in England as well for GAG as well.
Yeah, we do have. I think a UK chapter was starting or something. So yeah, with people over there, if you are in any country in Europe for that matter, and you want to, for instance, take up becoming a chapter leader, contact us. We will see if we can make you into something just like that, and you can make a big difference right where you're at.
Yeah, a massive difference. Been an absolute pleasure, Robert. Thanks for joining us today. You got an incredible message, and it's so important. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for standing up and being prepared to take on all the ists and phobes that are thrown at you, and all that kind of nonsense. But knowing that you're standing in truth is the most important thing. So just on that note, thanks for joining me on Raising the Bar, and take care and keep going, my friend.
All right, you too. Thanks, John.